what's the elevator speech to the people that say to me that they're going to leave Connecticut because they cannot afford to stay here?
I didn't create this mess. I got hired to straighten it out. Connecticut was a land of bad habits. Samuel Clemens referred to Connecticut as the land of steady habits, and that worked really well when Connecticut was always on the winning side of an equation, when Hartford was one of the 10 richest cities in the world, when we dominated manufacturing in the United States. Problem is we didn't change our habits from those days, and we just kept doing the same things we were doing day in and day out. So I'll give you a for instance. Total growth in the state's budget last year from the year before was 1.3%. The average during the last, 16 to 20 years was about 7%, 7.3%. I mean, that is a marked change. People say, well, Governor, you raised taxes. Yeah, I did. But I also was handed the largest per capita deficit in the nation. And we also did things to make sure that we stopped spending money as recklessly and stopped making commitments that had been made before. I'll give you a for instance. We have people from Torrington town government. The state has always required its municipalities and boards of education to do their financial reporting on something called GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. It exempted itself. It exempted itself from reporting under Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, but required its subdivisions to do that. That led to practices of making promises that you didn't fund. So when I became governor of the state of Connecticut, I inherited a state pension system that was one of the worst funded state pensions in the nation, and losing money as a result of poor performance on Wall Street, which a lot of other states had seen during that precipitous fall. We are now actuarially and accurately funding our pension program. In fact, I've expedited that so that we can save money over the next 20 years and get to first 85%, an appropriate standard, as opposed to something in the 40s, and then eventually have a fully funded pension program. If we did that on a long-term basis, we get off people's backs. On a short-term basis, I've got to make as many changes as I can, as quickly as I can, and lighten the burden of our citizens overall. That's why you can tell them that their electric costs are down 12% and falling. That's why you can repeat the number with respect to the size of state government at 1.3%. That's why you can point out to people that under a Democratic governor, quite frankly, state government is smaller than it was on the day I took office by over 1,200 people. And when we do a census on October 1, I'll let you know where we are on that number as well. I'm moving as quickly as I can to try to reinvent and reinvigorate the state of Connecticut. But 22 years of job loss has not only the impact on whether you're growing. We weren't. During that 22-year period of time, 23 million jobs were created in the United States. And on a net basis, not a one came to Michigan or Connecticut. What that means is the state government is almost constantly being put in a position of having to increase taxes and to mask some of those taxes by things like adding additional charges to your utility bill. Now, and not good things. I mean, we want to drive conservation, so we want to actually go to every one of your businesses and drive down your consumption of energy. We have a program to fund those things. That's tied to your bill. But the idea that we borrowed $1 billion in Wall Street not to change our habits and had a promise to borrow another $1 billion and put an additional fee on your electric bill to pay for it made no sense at all. That's why I stopped. Rome wasn't built in a day, didn't fall in a day, not going to be rebuilt in a day, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there on an active basis, fight by fight, system by system, and we are pledged to doing things better than we've done. Lean, technology, growth. So let me say this. If we had partners in Washington that actually performed, and I'm not talking about Senator Murphy, don't. But if you look at what Washington has done to the United States over the last 3.5 years, it is remarkable. We are pursuing an austerity approach to government at a time that we should be taking advantage of some of those strengths that I described earlier in my speech. We should be making investments in infrastructure. We should be building out world-class airports, world-class rail systems, and better delivery systems of electric energy. If we did those things, we'd be in far better position to take advantage. We cannot shrink our way out of our nation's accumulated problems of the last 20 years. We have to grow our way out of those things. And growth requires investment. And it requires a long-term strategic plan on how to grow our economy versus growing Taiwan's or China's or Germany's. We need the kind of concentration on what we need to get done here in the United States. If we do that, and even if we were to share at a lower percentage than our weight class, our size of population, even if it was lower than that, but we were doing a better job on the growth side, we would be substantially stronger. Listen, we got this critical time where Washington, which seems to major on the minor things, right, has some very big decisions to make. I remember the debate in 2011 about whether we would pay our debts. Can any one of you say that you would have a debate around your table about whether you're going to, and you're capable of repaying your debts, about whether you're going to do it? That discussion in the summer of 11 took at least 1.5 points out of economic growth that year. And that's not just me saying that, that's an economic analysis. We may have that very same discussion in the coming weeks. It's a ridiculous discussion to have. We have to pay our debts. We don't pay our debts. If this goes to the wall and we default, don't be standing near a fan. Right? So you look at that. You look at other things, other steps that have been taken in Washington. Even you know, the employee tax being added back into paychecks. That had a 2%. That had a profound impact on slowing growth that would have happened otherwise this year. In every other recession in the United States, government employment has grown as an offset to private sector declines. We've seen private sector declines and government declines at the same time for the first time in any post-World War II recession. So if you're wondering why this is taking so long to come out of, we've made some really bad decisions on a long-term basis in Washington, which I hope will be corrected. Now, I tell you that story because inside of Connecticut, we're actually trying to undo some of that harm. We are, in fact, generating infrastructure investment at unprecedented rates. We are, in fact, modernizing a rail system. We are, in fact, spending money on our highway and transportation systems. Just last month, or the month before, we appropriated $527 billion with respect to transportation infrastructure, which will be matched with about $600 million in federal expenditures in our state. With respect to that, that puts a lot of people back to work, and it builds an infrastructure that will allow us to be competitive in the future. That Small Business Express program of about $100 million in expenditures in the state of Connecticut, helping us retain and add thousands of jobs, is a very important investment in the people of the state of Connecticut. So we'll keep working at it. Honestly, we'll keep working at it. We'll have a Connecticut way of doing it, and we'll hope that the United States government produces its own way of doing it as well, and finds some middle ground. I mean, when did finding an agreement become a bad thing? You know? So listen, I told you I got to run, and it's already a couple minutes after 9, so thank you very much. God bless you all.